Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Pensacola. My name is Nancy Hagman, and I will be your service leader for today. We welcome you today, tomorrow, next week, whenever it suits your heart and your mind to be stretched and to grow. And we include those that are here today, but also beyond our walls. We have a few announcements. First, we want to acknowledge the trick-or-treat last week. That was a success, and we want to be sure to include several people, so I will read their names, whether I say them right or not. Music was Scott Satterwhite, Mike Kilmer, and Joe Vincent. And other people that contributed were Gay Yo, Yao? Yo? Yao? Yao, yao, yao? Okay. Mark Thuma, Chris Brockway, Penny Fent, Crystal Lee, Aeon Frasher, Gracie Yao-Lee, Farron Collins, and Honor Bell. And anybody that wasn't mentioned, please consider yourself included in this list. I always get somebody coming up and say, "You forgot," which is always true. It's hard when you call out names. Special today will be a newcomer orientation right after the service in the sanctuary here. All visitors are welcome, and recent members and friends. This is a time to kind of learn about our congregation, but also how we work and how the church functions and what's important for us as a community, and to see if this is something that you would fit in or like to be a part of. And it's excellent. It's run by Lauren Anzaldo, and she can organize anything. Next Sunday is Sunday Sweets, so bring your sweet tooth, but also bring cash. And traditionally, we have a Thanksgiving potluck dinner among ourselves, just to celebrate us as a community. And that'll be on November the 24th, right after the service. Bring your loved ones. You can bring some you aren't so loved about as well. Your neighbors and strangers, but we'd like for you to bring a side dish. And there will be turkey, ham, drinks, and desserts that'll be provided. So plan to stay a little after for cleanup, because we always need more hands. And we can be thankful together. And that's the UU Fund program that Mary Beth is the chair. And she does a great job, so thank you. And now we will have chalice lighting words. Today we light our chalice because that's what's important to us. It is important to us to have a light to shine, for us to be a light to shine, and for there to be a light for us to follow. Blessed be. We'll have some opening words that will be followed by a moment of silence for reflection regarding our opening words, as well as a calming moment for all of us. This is by William Schultz. He was a former president of our UUA.
Number one,
nationally.
the inherent worth and dignity of every
And we
person.
also have an extra sound. But it stopped. We just ask and it stops, right? This is, by William Schultz. Come into this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power and let its vision change your heart. And now we will have our video of our 8 principles.
The Unitarian Universalist Church of Pensacola, the 8 Principles.
Number one, the inherent worth worth and dignity of every person.
Number 2, justice, equity, and compassion in human relation.
Number 3, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregation.
Number 4, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
Number 5, the right of conscience and the use of democratic process within our congregation and in society at large.
Number 6, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all.
Number 7, respect for the interdependent web of existence,
of which we are all a part.
Number 8, active commitment to dismantle racism and other oppression in ourselves and our institutions.
And our opening hymn, if you will stand, if you are in body or spirit, it will be in our teal hymnal. The choir will come forward, 1008, and we will remain standing for our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. You may be seated. This is a time in our service that we come together just for ourselves. We do not project this out on the internet. This is for our community that is breath worldwide. So we'll take a moment just to pause. And have just a community candle about that. And now if there's something you would joys and sorrows that are on your heart, but not spoken at this time. And now we'll sing the children out. And now this is a time in our service that we take an offering. Many times as we pass the basket, especially for visitors, you may see that the basket doesn't look like there's much in it, which is probably true, because the hearts and minds of our members make donations on a regular basis, and they do it in our world of electronics. And so it's transferred electronically, but we still pass the basket. There are times that we want to add something extra, or we want to include people in our gathering. We are a self-funded church, and we use our money wisely, and I encourage you to enjoy just this time. Some of you may have come to this service expecting a conversation and introduction on immigration. Well, we're not doing that today. Pat Quinn has put together a beautiful service on immigration and immigrants, and it's going to include pictures of some of our own community. However, she chose to work with some sort of an instrument that sliced a couple of her fingers to the point that she had to have emergency surgery on Friday. So she's on our hearts in recovery. She's not satisfied with this decision. Because it's her left hand, and she's left-handed. So she contacted me and said, Nance, and I said, yes. When you get a call on Thursday from the speaker, generally, there's a question about something, and this was a pretty big question. So I turned around and called Zach. Hello, Zach. Well, what you got available for Sunday? And fortunately, Zach had something available for us. And so today we have Zach Helton.
Thank you. So I am not Pat. I'm not going to be unpacking immigration. Sorry. Instead, I'm going to share a short story I wrote a while back. And I know that might be kind of weird in a space like this. I didn't necessarily write it for a church service, but I also believe in the power of stories, not necessarily to persuade or try to teach us something, but to create a space for us to ask ourselves, who am I in this? And what do I feel invited to do? And if nothing else, in their ability to lift us out of ourselves for just a brief time, which can be a merciful relief in a season as anxious as this one. A quick word about where this story came from. Have you ever seen those Jesus for President lawn signs pop up everywhere? I first noticed them in 2020, around election time. And at first I was kind of annoyed, and then I started thinking, wouldn't that be kind of hilarious, though? Because, if Jesus did come back, and Jesus did run for president, I kind of think that the people who have those signs, we kind of hate him a little bit. So I wrote a version of this piece back then, and it's been evolving, and I'm glad to be able to share it with you this morning. This is Jesus 2024. May it give us a little bit of relief and some energy this week. Well, after 2 millennia, the church finally got what they waited for. Jesus came back. Sure, there was a conspicuous lack of earthquakes, blackening suns, horsemen, riders, or any other apocalyptic accoutrement, but it was definitely him. Rather than crashing in on a cloud, though, he just kind of appeared one day, carrying on much in the same way he'd carried on 2,000 years before, teaching and healing and multiplying foodstuffs across the Middle East. Now, as luck would have it, Jesus' return fell on a U.S. election year, so, as one might expect, there was a powerful push to get him to run for president. Some commentators pointed out that Jesus didn't quite meet the 35-year-old age requirement. Others pointed out that he had neither been born in the United States nor had he been a resident for 14 years. Most seemed to agree, though, that these were extraordinary circumstances and they merited extraordinary considerations. Jesus 2024 signs started springing up on lawns and street corners across the country, their owners hoping to nudge him into the race. Jesus, meanwhile, was reluctant. After some deliberation, though, they convinced Jesus that times had changed, that hardly anybody got crucified anymore, and that he should at least take part in one little town hall-style debate. After all, what's the worst that could happen? Jesus agreed, though he did request that there be no cross-shaped jewelry allowed. For reasons people had trouble understanding, he found them off-putting. When the big night came, every seat at the Yale Theater was packed. Stage managers decorated the stage in an odd blend of stars, stripes, and those little fish you see on car bumpers. They set out 3 podiums rather than the traditional 2, one bearing an elephant, the second bearing a donkey, the third bearing a lamb carrying a white flag. This last image had been another point of contention, as Jesus insisted that the whole logo thing was a blatant violation of the second commandment anyway. Soon, though, they closed the door and dimmed the lights, and the crowd watched excitedly as the digital clocks counted down 3, 2, 1. Fanfare started playing above the sound of the crowd, and a boom camera came down to face the moderator at the desk. "Good evening," she announced, "and welcome to the second debate of the season. For the first time in the history of our network, there will be an unprecedented third-party candidate for whom truly no introduction is needed. It is now my honor to welcome," but applause drowned out her last words as the candidates took to the stage. First was the Republican nominee, a white man in his mid-70s, dressed in a baggy suit with a red tie. Following him, the Democrat, also a white male in a nearly identical suit, except for the tie, which was blue. And then finally, in a burlap robe and knockoff Birkenstocks, was Jesus. The crowd went wild. With his messy black hair and his Middle Eastern complexion, Jesus kind of stuck out between the two now understandably tense candidates. The roar died down as the moderator explained the rules. "There will be 8 questions from the audience," she said. "Then each candidate will be given 2 minutes to respond. And she went through time limits and rebuttals, etc., until finally it was time to start. Our first question, she said, comes from Jenny Shore right here in Connecticut. Miss Shore. A runner handed the microphone to a woman standing near the front. Hi, she started fumbling with the card in her hand. I just wanted to ask, with the wildfires in the West and increasing droughts in the global South, how do each of you intend to address the rising threat of climate change? The moderator invited the Republican to speak first. The idea that humankind could have such an impact on the Earth's climate, he said, I'm not going to do a voice, is quite honestly absurd. The planet goes through cycles of climate change, which are totally natural, and things will eventually move back to normal. My opponent would use climate change as a fear-mongering technique to get your vote, but global warming is only a theory cooked up by corrupt scientists and politicians. The strength of our future lies in a strong economy and strong values. The crowd cheered. The moderator nodded to the Democrat. Well, regardless of what my opponent would have you believe, he began, climate change is a very real existential threat. It's a challenge we must meet with strategy and resolve. Over the next several years, my administration would be dedicated to working towards incentivized solar development and carbon taxation that would get us all moving in the right direction. And at last, the moderator turned to Jesus. For the first time, they would hear his opinion on the subject. Yes, thank you, Miss Shore, Jesus said. I hear your concern, and you've spoken with courage. Someone in the audience asked a little too loudly, what did he say? And it was clear that they weren't expecting Jesus' accent. Although, as English wouldn't exist until another 500 years after his death, it should have been impressive that he spoke English at all. When God gave humankind dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and every living thing that creeps on the earth, Jesus continued, it was not for humanity's unbridled consumption. It was for our responsible stewardship. In our lust for comfort, we have forgotten this, and we believe that our wealth will save us from the wrath to come. It will not. I tell you, repent. Otherwise, the darkness is coming, and the darkness will be inescapable. Jesus addressed the Republican, when Israel did not heed the voice of her prophets, what befell her? And if you, my friends, do not heed the voice of your own, what may befall you? And you, he addressed the Democrat, who suddenly looked like he wanted to hide under his podium. You claim that you do know that the day of judgment is at hand. You claim to understand that your sin takes food from the mouths of children, yet you speak in decades while the world burns now. Repent, I tell you. Serve God and become a balm for the healing of this world. And when he was finished, no one really knew what to say. The crowd had expected that he might tell them to have faith or to pray or maybe to accept him into their heart as Lord and Savior. But they didn't get any of that. Our next question comes from Dave Farmer of Georgia. The moderator broke the silence. Mr. Farmer. Eyes scanned the room as the mic went to a stocky man in his mid-40s. And Jesus took the chance to take a sip of water, which at some point had become a cup of wine. Yeah, thanks, Dave Farmer said, taking the mic. I had a question about national security, particularly about threats posed by the Middle East and immigrants coming up from the South. Both candidates squirmed a little as they became hyper-aware of just how brown their new opponent was. I want to know, Mr. Farmer continued, how you intend to protect the United States from terrorists and the influx of criminals and drugs. Well, I'm not ashamed to say it, the Republican candidate said. There are some very dangerous people out there, and by God, we have the best military in the entire world. Over half of our national budget is allocated to military spending, and that should be a point of pride. We can bomb our enemies back to the Stone Age and secure our borders against any unsavory characters wherever they may come from. Well, hold on there, the Democrat broke in. I'm proud of the strength of our military, too. I had 2 sons that served. But these are delicate situations, and they must be approached with diplomacy. I'm confident my administration could engage in productive peace talks abroad and create effective processes for immigrants wishing to come into our country. Thank you, gentlemen, the moderator said. Now we'll hear from Jesus Christ. It's Josh, Jesus corrected. Excuse me? It's Josh, Jesus clarified. Well, it's Yeshua, really, but Josh is fine. Jesus addressed the crowd. I grew up in a nation struggling to breathe, he said. It was a nation struggling under the boot of a military empire, much like the United States. Rome relied on a military the likes of which the world had never seen, as you do. They conquered by force, they ruled by fear of violence. But your shared mistake is that you fail to see God's image in those you call enemies, who are typically more in need of food than guns. If you overcome evil by evil, then will evil not win either way? If you live by these weapons, you will die by these weapons. And these unsavory characters you speak of, that was my family. I know what it is to flee violence. If Egypt's government had treated us anything like you treat those who come to you for shelter, then these books you call the Gospels would be very short. The crowd started to murmur, and the candidates exchanged a rare glance of solidarity. Thank you, the moderator said. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's have the next question, please. And it went on like this for several more rounds. Each word from Jesus making the crowd a little more uncomfortable. After a few more questions, no one really knew what was going on anymore. The conservatives thought Jesus sounded more like a socialist than the Lord of Lords they knew, and the liberals thought Jesus sounded a little too progressive for their taste. By the end, no one really wanted him up there anymore, but nobody was going to be the first to say it. Eventually, they came to the second to last question. It was from Rita O'Connor of Virginia. Yes, hi, she said. I was wondering, can you please describe how you intend to protect the next generation of the unborn? The Republican looked like someone had tossed him a slow ball. Now, this is an area where Josh and I are on the same page, he said. I believe we can both say with absolute confidence that we both look forward to the day that this will be a footnote in America's history books. Jesus, the moderator said, or Josh, what's your response? Jesus considered this. There once was an ambitious man, he started, who cared little for anything but gathering power. One day he overheard a shepherd mention that he had lost a sheep in the mountains, and the ambitious man saw an opportunity. He began going around telling the story of the lost sheep, warning the people of rival tribes lurking in the mountains, stealing sheep and murdering shepherds. Based on very little, he created enough alarm that the people began to gather under his banner of fear and outrage. Soon he even began to preach that God had ordained them to hunt down the rival tribesmen and wipe them out. In truth, he cared nothing for sheep and nothing for shepherds, but much for power, and he became powerful indeed. The audience was silent. They weren't really following. You say that you are in favor of life, Jesus explained, but in truth, how are you different from the ambitious man? You use half-truths to rally under a banner of fear and outrage, yet your actions betray you. If you truly value life, then why did you execute 22 of God's children last year? Why does it cost a small fortune to gain access to health care in your country? Why do you not address the poverty and hunger and lack of childcare that is responsible for driving so much of this practice that you say you wish to eradicate? You must ask yourselves, each of you, do you truly serve the God of life or the gods of power? Because I tell you, you cannot serve two masters. What began as a murmuring rose to a chorus of yells. No one would have imagined a bishop booing Jesus off stage, but there he was, booing away. We have one more question, the moderator exclaimed. One more! But the audience only quieted when John Jeffries of Houston, Texas, took the mic. In his confusion, he spoke for all of them. Look, I don't know you, he said. This is a Christian nation. Your followers here are more oppressed every day, but I'm not hearing anything from you about family values or prayer in schools. I guess my question is, who are you? Now, Jesus had heard this tone before. He'd seen this look in people's eyes. He knew that his time was up, so he might as well tell the truth. I am Yeshua of Nazareth, he said, and you have buried me so deeply beneath your lust for power that my legacy bears no likeness to my image. I run on a platform that brings good news to the poor, that proclaims release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind. So what does it tell you, I ask? That even if you had another 2 millennia to prepare, you would never, ever elect me to lead your so-called Christian nation. That was when they lost control of the crowd. Frantic producers cut the feed. People stormed the stage. They brought down stage lights. Candidates were whisked away. And it was hours before the situation was stable. By the end, 20 red-faced Americans sat zip-tied on the stage. And Jesus was nowhere to be found. Security footage later revealed him passing through the crowds, shaking the dust from his feet, and disappearing. Months later, a reporter happened upon Jesus in the Republic of South Sudan. She published a video from her smartphone. "Do you ever plan to return to the United States?" she asked. "Return?" Jesus asked. "I never left. But if they want to find me, they'll need to change where they look."
And now I invite you to stand for our closing hymn, number 205 in our gray hymnal. Amazing Grace, and the choir will come forward. In the words of Zach Helton, may you find your own space. And again, our closing words are by Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage. Deep down, I tell you, there is truth. You are not alone. You are seen. You are loved. Go in peace.